welcome to Unpublished Opinions, an Institute for Justice roundtable podcast, the podcast where IJ attorneys get together and give their unvarnished and unpublished opinions about the law. I'm your host, John Wrench, the Assistant Director of the Center for Judicial Engagement at the Institute for Justice. We're recording today on January 30th, 2026, and I'm joined today by my IJ colleague, Josh Windham. Hi, Josh.
Hey.
And a very special welcome to Kirby Thomas West, who is joining our rotation of unpublished opinion guests. Welcome on the show, Kirby.
Thanks so much, John. Delighted to be here.
Can I interject, John? You
course.
Started by calling this a roundtable podcast. Are we? We're sitting in a triangle.
The
table is round.
I was going to say, what shape is this table, Josh?
What's round. Well, that's kind of like the Da Vinci, what is that drawing of the
Vitruvian Man?
Yeah, we're in some like alchemical thing going on here. We are at a round table, but we are sitting in the shape of a triangle. That is true. We have often, I hate to admit this to our listeners, we have recorded this at a rectangular table in the past.
Wow.
So it's been a little
peek of how
bit,
the sausage is made, folks.
a little disingenuous, but we are at a round table, which I prefer, and it's also just more honest, and we're big on honesty in this podcast. We're also big on games, and we're going to play some games today. This is actually going to be a game show episode, but if that sounds trivial to you, it's only a little bit trivial. It's also going to be very interesting and very fun. So as a computer named Whopper once said, do you guys know what movie that's from? Shall we play a game?
I'm so sorry, I do
No?
not.
That's okay. War Games.
Wait, is that the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I know
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that movie, but I've never seen it.
The person types in that they want to play, what's it called? Global Thermonuclear War. And they don't realize that it's a computer that's like attached to all the missiles. We are not going to be playing that game.
Thank goodness.
We're going to be playing a few games that will touch on things ranging from our careers and famous passages from Supreme Court opinions. So we're going to be a little bit everywhere. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to start with a game called Peek and Pit. And I think Josh is going to give us kind of an overview of how that game works.
Yeah, we're just going to say the sort of high point and low point of our legal careers. I mean, you could do legal career and not just like IJ career, right? Like Kirby, you came from,
There's some pits to be spilled there, yeah.
I'm going to leave that up to, dealer's choice in terms of how you do that. But some people call it rose and thorn. But I just think it's a fun way to kind of think back on. I mean, I'm coming on 10 years at IJ, so to think back on some of the highs and lows. So.
Yeah, awesome. How about you start us off?
Okay. Do you want to why don't we start on a high note? So each do a pit.
Sure.
And then we can circle back and do our peak.
I like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to think of like the one across many, many years, right?
Sure.
But one that probably is a good story is one of my very first potential case investigations that I had to do at IJ. So it must have been like 2016 or 2017. And we had this idea that we wanted to challenge a taxi monopoly in the city of Baltimore. And it was a big institutional push we were making to find a client out there. The scheme was sort of ripe for challenge under the state's anti-monopoly clause. And so that required us to pound the pavement and like go ride a bunch of taxis because we had tried other methods of getting in contact with folks. We had like open house events at restaurants where we tried to get taxi drivers to come in and chat with us. And like some of that was successful, but it turned out that the only real way to get people's names and numbers and to have conversations with them and to connect about this issue was to simply ride in their cab. And so I got really, really good at just riding from like the north end of Baltimore to the inner harbor, to the north end, to the inner harbor again and again and again. I rode in like over 100 taxis over the course of a few weeks, including we realized at one point that we had like really tapped the market in terms of like business hour taxi rides. Like I just knew every driver in all of Baltimore. I was
going to say, you're like, oh, this guy. And we're like, no, I need a different guy. You can go ahead.
And so we realized that we had to try nighttime rides. And so, we drove to the office that we had up there at the time in Baltimore, stayed overnight and like rode taxis at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. to meet people we had never met before.
This is the makings of a good movie.
It was, and
1 a.m. in Baltimore.
Yeah, and I had my greatest. So the reason it's a pit is that we found one client, and we actually like got really close to filing a lawsuit with him, and then he had to pull out at the last minute while Diana Simpson, if you're listening to this, was on her honeymoon. And that was not a fun experience for her. I think she was waiting in line at Pearl Harbor, actually, when she got the call. And then we kept looking, and we found someone else, and he was perfect. And we found him in the middle of the night, and he had the name, I can't tell you his name, right? But he had the name of an action movie hero. And we just thought to ourselves, this guy has the perfect name, the perfect narrative to like bring this case. And then he disappeared on us. Very soon after that. And so we ended up dropping the effort after we thought we had actually ridden in every taxi in the city of Baltimore. But long search with nothing to show for it, except for the fact that I learned how much grit and effort it can take to find cases at IJ, which is true. Like our cases are very hard to build unless the perfect client just walks through the door, which is pretty rare.
The vanishing potential client is like the most devastating public interest lawyer experience, I think, where you're like, oh, this is it. We've got it. We've got the one. And then I have my own experiences with that, including very recent ones. Yes.
Yeah. It's even by that point, you've already narrowed down, right? Like you've picked a place, you've picked an issue. So you've whittled down those things. You've picked a place. And then you have all these clients. And then even of those potential clients, the ones that don't disappear, you have a bunch of attrition, and you might have to litigate multiple cases on the issue before you get a favorable ruling. It's a long grind, but it sounds like it was a good, like you said, a good experience for this is how it is.
100%. I mean, and and I have a lot of respect for the fact that people do get cold feet. I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's like scary to stand up to the government. It's scary to put your name out there and to sort of be in our public communications about our cases.
It takes forever.
It takes a long time. So I get it. But it is frustrating on our end when we're, trying to help.
It's such a classic new IJer experience, and such a good experience to have early on. It reminds me a lot of our Detroit forfeiture case. One of my very first assignments as an IJer was to just go to the courthouse in Wayne County, sit at the vehicle seizure unit, and just talk to folks that were there. And I mean, just talk about like a vast swath of the human experience of just like getting to talk to all these different people. And some of them were just like, yeah, man, I was picking up a prostitute. I'm like, well, I'm sorry that you lost your car, but probably not a good IJ case. And some of them had really tragic stories, and just, having a lot of them were very, very skeptical of me as a lawyer. They'd never had a positive interaction basically with anybody associated with the justice system. And so when you say, we represent people for free and we want to help you, they're like, all right, what's the catch?
Sure you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that's a classic IJ experience, which is kind of hitting the ground, talking to people, trying to figure out what the situation is and find the right person.
Yeah, I learned a lot from it. And I think, honestly, it helped set me up for no PC search I've ever done has ever been that hard again. So I think I've learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
Kirby.
Okay, so I had my pit prepared, but Josh's mention of pre-IJ pits. I think probably the actual low was when I was at a firm supervising 40 contract attorneys doing doc reviews 6 days a week from 7 to 7. That's
not your peak.
That was not my peak of my legal career. But it's kind of boring because it's pretty self-evident why that was sort of lame. So more recent pit. One of my roles here is I am, along with my colleague Dan Albin, the co-director of our national initiative to end forfeiture abuse. And as part of that project for a long time, we've been litigating the issue of whether you have a constitutional right to a prompt post-seizure hearing when the government takes your property for civil forfeiture. And we, a couple years ago, had a great win in the Sixth Circuit on that issue in our Detroit forfeiture case, in which the Sixth Circuit said, yes, you do have a constitutional right to a prompt post-seizure hearing. And within 2 weeks, you need to get before a judge for this hearing. And that was extremely exciting because we've been litigating this issue for a long time. Huge win for our forfeiture project, huge win for our clients in Detroit forfeiture, who I love. And then, extremely frustratingly, about a year later, the U.S. Supreme Court took up the issue in a case called Culley versus Marshall, and said, no, actually, you do not have a constitutional right to a prompt post-seizure hearing. And I think this was such a bummer because, as you both know, we definitely do not win all of our cases. We're litigating on the cutting edge of constitutional theories, and we're taking on fights that we know are long shots often. But when we lose our cases, at least we know, like, you know what, we gave it our best shot. And like, we did everything we could to have won this case, and we can like immediately be looking to what are we going to do next. But when our cases are abrogated by somebody else litigating it, and especially in that instance, I felt like it had not been litigated particularly well. It was just like, it felt like a real blow of like, oh gosh, now we've like kind of definitively lost this issue. And it was kind of out of our control in a way that was just not something that we could influence. But I will say that case also gave us a great concurrence by Justice Gorsuch, where he basically said, okay, I don't think there is this specific procedural right or this right to a prompt post-seizure hearing, but I kind of think civil forfeiture more broadly, as it is currently practiced in the United States, is unconstitutional in a variety of ways. He didn't give us like an exact roadmap, which would have been helpful. It's kind of like, guess how, which we're more than happy to do. We agree that it is unconstitutional in a variety of ways, and we've got specific theories. So I think that there was something good that came of it. I think we've really used that case and that concurrence to develop our strategy in the forfeiture space going forward. But when the decision first came down and it abrogated our Sixth Circuit decision, that was very frustrating.
Yeah, it's tough to not be in control of. We often have a particular theory that we've spent a lot of time on in whatever area of our litigation it is, and it is tough because you cannot control anybody else litigating it under theories that you either think are weaker, or the case is litigated differently than you would,
or they just don't know the facts really of like how this actually plays out in real life.
Yeah, and then you can't really do much about that, right? Like you can maybe file an amicus brief or try to take something, take a case over on appeal if someone doesn't want to litigate it on appeal. But it is an unusual thing that as you're kind of litigating cases across the country, other people are also going to litigate cases across the country, often with other priorities, under other theories, and it is going to have an impact on all of your cases.
Yeah. Although you raise a good point about the amicus briefs, because IJ did file an amicus in that case, and it was heavily cited in both the concurrence and the dissent. So I think that really it's a credit. I did not work on that, but it's just a credit to IJ institutionally that even in cases that we're not litigating, we can still make a mark, and I think hopefully in that case set us up for future successes.
Yeah. My pit, I would say, is kind of a combination of an experience with like an area of litigating that was like, we should obviously win it, which I do feel about like all of our cases, but this is like particularly true where I felt like that, and it was combined with COVID. So I came to IJ in 2019, and I think that this will be an interesting thing as time goes on, that where everybody was during COVID has a pretty big impact, for most people, has a pretty big impact of their experience of that thing. I have friends who are in law school. I know people who were in their last year of high school. I know people who were just like little kids who were just starting school. There are all of those, that fundamentally changed, someone's senior year of high school and things like that. Like I remember, my friend who was, all of their law school classes were remote. And as someone who, I liked being in a law school classroom, I liked being in the law school, I think I would have hated that.
Oh, yeah. And I loved law school, and I really feel for those people.
Yeah, me too. And so like I came to IJ in late 2019 and was here for, 6 months, 5 or 6 months before COVID. And so that kind of, that was an interesting thing on its own, because it's kind of, I wasn't anywhere before IJ. I came straight to IJ out of law school. And it is very interesting to start like your first real job and you're like, this is awesome. And then 5 or 6 months later, you're like, this is still awesome, but I don't get to see my colleagues as much. The world, everything is kind of upside down for a while. And you're like getting your feet at this new thing. So that I think is just kind of the nature of COVID. But while that was going on, we, as like IJ often is, we were jumping on things that were timely, and we were doing research on certificate of need laws across the country. And we did this huge report on certificate of need laws, which are basically like in a bunch of different areas of healthcare. Before you can offer that service, you effectively need to get the permission of the people that you'd be competing against, which they don't usually want to give you. And so it's kind of like a state enforced monopoly. And it's almost worse because it's like delegated out to the people you'd be competing with. I did a bunch of research on that, and it was during COVID. So like the healthcare issue was like especially poignant at the time. And it was one of my first experiences with being like, we are so right about this. And these laws are so unjust, and courts are just going to, they have to agree with this. You know, how wouldn't you? You'd see all this evidence and all of this stuff. And so it felt like, you know, at least we're like throwing ourselves into this big thing. And as we kind of got into the con litigation across the country, it was difficult. It was very difficult. And that was an interesting experience because it was I think it was my first one where it was pretty obvious to me that what we were doing, we were like legally right about, like in a pretty significant way, and that it was nevertheless going to be a very hard road to getting courts to agree with us. And I think one of the takeaways I had from that is you have to be patient, because the con issue is not over. And like I see this all the time. Our con report is cited all the time. Like in the last couple of years, it's been cited. People are working on scholarship. People are litigating things. It's still on people's mind. And it was just a good lesson about how it takes time for issues that are not on people's minds to get there. And then courts are often even slower. And so you just kind of have to do the thing. You have to do the grind, and you have to be a little bit patient, and you're going to bump into losses kind of at every level. But eventually you just kind of have to have some faith that you'll be vindicated. And I don't know if there's another way to do the job unless you kind of approach it that way.
Yeah.
I think you're right that sometimes just patience is like the only way through this stuff. I've had so many cases where I just drank. Like, you can't help but convince yourself when you're building a case and you're vetting it. And once you've gotten through the process of saying, like, this is a good IJ case, then you're just fighting for the case.
Yeah.
And so you're in it, and you think your theory is right, and it's hard to imagine how it couldn't be right. And one of your biggest jobs is actually to do that imagining and to like fight a shadow box against yourself in a way and imagine what are the best arguments against me, and let me steelman those. But it's been interesting to see, to your point about patience and maybe courts sort of lagging behind a little bit. There was a period like during peak COVID when courts were just sort of like, everywhere you saw someone seek a PI, it was denied. Mm-hmm. Like all these COVID orders were allowed by courts, right? And there was no real judicial appetite for slowing them down. But what has been interesting is to see sort of the lagging COVID litigation and what courts have been saying about COVID, like with a degree of hindsight about how crazy a time it actually was. And like we allowed some of that stuff as a society. And just to give you one example, like in North Carolina, the state Supreme Court has now issued 3 decisions in the last 2 years. All of them are decisions that take this right to earn a living clause in the state constitution, Article 1, Section 1, and totally reinvigorate it. Like inject it with adrenaline and say like, everyone has a right to the fruits of their labor. It's a fundamental right. We apply meaningful scrutiny to this. Facts matter. And so a bunch of cases involving challenges to COVID executive orders under North Carolina's route that allows you to actually get damages under the state constitution for past violations. Courts are now looking at those challenges with like a degree of maybe we were kind of crazy back then. Like we should just let this person make their factual case and like build a record. Whereas I think, pre-COVID, if you had somebody like challenging those executive orders and demanding immediate relief, I don't think you would have seen the same kind of reaction from the state high court. So it's interesting to see how a few years of time can really make a huge difference in the way that courts think about some of this stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's like it's a silver lining that it's affecting judicial opinions in a positive way. But I think it's just like a snapshot of one area of society where I feel like society more broadly is also like, man, COVID, what a fever dream that was. Like just
what a time.
Yeah, what a time.
What years were those? Yeah. It is like a memory hole a little bit. It is wacky. it's fitting that there's turtles on the outside of the Supreme Court building. You know, it is definitely, it's slow going. And obviously some of that is a feature of it, but some of it, I think just the nature of the average temperament, I guess, of the people who become judges and justices and the way that the system works, it is often the case that you're going to have some patience to have some progress. Yeah. I mean, IJ is kind of a story of that in many ways, right? Like but you're going to litigate rational basis cases. Like what a crazy person thing to do.
Yeah. My con law professor told me in college that like no court anywhere had ruled for a plaintiff in a rational basis case involving economic regulation since like the New Deal. And
Josh Windham said, "Hold my beer."
I was like, send him an email on a little string site. Let's do our peaks. Yeah, let's do our peaks. You guys, this is an easy one for me just because it's relatively recent. But the sort of like experience of being flattered by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in the way that I was
I knew where you were going.
Is hard to top. So I guess for the audience, a little bit of context. We have
maybe we'll play a clip of
Oh, please do.
Yeah, I mean, it's on there. You can find it. But we have a case in Pennsylvania challenging what's called the Open Fields Doctrine under the state constitution, which is this federal rule that goes back a century that says government officials can roam around private land and surveil people on private land without a warrant or cause, just because they feel like it. And so we're going state by state and trying to get courts to reject this under state constitutions. And we have great arguments for that in Pennsylvania. And so the case came to a head in April of last year where we had an oral argument on the just sort of question of whether the court should reject and throw out this open fields doctrine. And I got up there and started making my argument, and it was a long time before I was interrupted. And the whole time I was talking, I just had justices like smiling at me and nodding. And I was like, this is the weirdest, creepiest. This is surreal. I've never experienced anything like this in a court before where somebody is just eating up every word I'm saying. Now, I got a little pushback, but it was pretty surreal for me after all the moots and all the prep we did and thinking it was going to be a huge uphill battle. It was just a smooth sailing type of argument. And then my opponent just got, scorched by everyone on the court. And, we don't have an opinion yet, so you're not going to, necessarily like assume the outcome. But it went about as well as you could script it up for an oral argument. And then to wrap things up, when I finished talking, I had justices asking me like, when I graduated from law school and like if it was the first time I had argued in court, and saying things that are very complimentary of me that I will not repeat on the podcast, but that, I had a hard time not just sort of saying, how is this real? Like, pinch me. So
I will say, Josh is, if anything, underselling how complimentary the Pennsylvania Supreme Court was. A little peek behind the curtain. We at IJ like to support our colleagues. We like to listen to oral arguments when they're being streamed, and so we have a chat specifically for that purpose.
It's a fun chat too.
It's a really fun chat, and I hope that you have a printout of that chat like framed somewhere, Josh, because it was both hilarious in classic IJ fashion, but also just like, oh my goodness, like no one has ever been this successful at oral argument before. The justices are basically like, Josh Windham, how are you both so brilliant and very good looking? And can you educate the court? What is your workout routine, Josh Windham? It was a delight to listen to, and a delight to listen to with our colleagues, and a lot of good jokes being made, but also a lot of just support, because we all know how much Josh has fought on this issue, and it's so incredibly validating to get to see your colleagues get the recognition that they deserve when you've seen how hard they're working behind the scenes to make this happen. So that was a good day for all IJers, I think.
It was a great day. Yeah,
it was.
For sure. Hard to top. Unless we get a decision in our favor soon, in which case that will be my favorite day.
There you go. Yeah, it was really interesting to listen to, because I think, no one was experiencing it as intensely as you were, but I think we were all having a somewhat similar experience of like, this is surreal. Like this whole thing is surreal. And I do wonder whether there was a moment where you're watching all this and thinking, am I just about to get slaughtered, where it's like the judge is like, you did a very good job, and now but it wasn't.
No,
it is not
right.
the other, the other shoe didn't drop. It was actually just they seemed very pleased by it. It was wonderful. We'll link it. It was
Thank you, Your Honor.
May I ask you, Mr. Windham, you were admitted by our court pro hac vice to argue. Is this your first argument before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court?
This is my third.
This is your third. And how long have you been in practice?
I started practicing in 2016. I think I first met several members of the court in
You appear to be a law school intern.
You're like Russo. You're barely out of high school.
That's right. Well, hopefully that doesn't affect the outcome in this case.
You argue like a 20-year practitioner.
Well, thank you very much.
Let's just say you're not as old as the common law.
You're always welcome in our courts.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, let's hear from Mr. Kowalczyk.
if you didn't pick that as your peak, I would have been shocked.
Yeah, no, our litigation director, Dana Berliner, emailed me or called me after I forget what she did, but she said, really like soak this up because this just doesn't happen. It happens like once every 10 years. And she would know. It's few and far between.
That was a great one.
Yeah. Kirby, your peak?
Oh man, it's hard to compete with that. I think definite major peak was I got to work on a Supreme Court case at IJ, Carson versus Macon, and it was just such an incredible experience to get to kind of be part of that process from soup to nuts and get to help Michael Bendis, who argued the case excellently, to help him prepare and go to all his moots and get to like be part of that was just really invigorating. And then to get the win, which was really just like a decisive victory for IJ's educational choice work and really put the final nail in the coffin of basically the strongest route of attack on school choice programs, the Blaine amendments. That was a really cool day to get that win, but also just the day of like listening to Michael argue. And we had worked so hard by that point that while a question was being asked, I could already imagine, I'm like, I know exactly what Michael's going to say, and getting to witness that and also with other IJers. And we have a great tradition where we all come back to the office and we have a toast afterwards and recognize our clients who are so incredible and each other and all the people at IJ who work to make things like that happen, which is basically everybody at IJ, because those huge Herculean efforts really involve everybody. And it's pretty special. And I'm going to sneak in a bonus one because I'm talking about school choice work. So an extra little one. Our Alaska educational choice case, we were up there for an argument in Anchorage, and David Hodges and I went to the school of one of our clients, and the school was just so excited to have us there. They asked us if we would talk to some students, and we're like, yeah, definitely, we'd love to. And by that, what I didn't realize what they meant is, it's a K through 12 school. Will you go to every classroom K through 12 and tell them what you do and why you're here? And that was both just delightful to get to talk to all these kids and see like what this work means to real families. Like, this is why we do the work, right? So these kids can be in this really cool school that they love and with these teachers that they really love. And it's just really moving. But also it was a great kind of comms exercise of like, explain your case to a kindergartner, then a first grader, then a second grader. And it slightly gets like, a little more complex, like answer questions from, a high school senior, but also a third grader. It's like, it was just a really cool experience. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, that's kind of connected to the one that I'm going to pick for my peak. I like what you said about we talk about our cases often to our audience is often courts, right? Like, you're thinking of like, how do I explain this to a court who's thinking of precedent, who's thinking of law in the way that judges think about law. And that is totally different from how you talk to a little kid, but it's also different how you talk to someone who's, some like middle-aged person working a job that doesn't intersect with law at all and sees stuff on the news. And it is a different way of talking to them. And I think mine is related to like what can be so great about talking to people about IJ's work who kind of fit into that bucket. I did a talk last year during the summer to a group of people, and I've done a few of these, but the one that struck me about this was it was just a presentation kind of about IJ's work, and we went through some cases and our pillars and why we were founded and all of that stuff. And then there was time for questions, and I expected, I left like 10 or 15 minutes for questions, and I thought that, sometimes people are interested in the cases. Sometimes people, like we were saying before, when you say like, we're lawyers and we represent people for free, they're like, like there is nothing for free, right? Many of these people, they worked in business or things like that. So they, shout out to Patrick Giacomo, our colleague who on Twitter gets called an ambulance chaser every time that he goes and finds someone who's like, we'd like to talk to this person, maybe help them. But like people are suspicious when you offer to help them. So I usually leave time for questions to kind of work through those things. But the reason this talk was such a peak was I've spoken more in my role at CJE to people who are not judges and sometimes not lawyers. And it is, I think, one of the most wonderful things that can happen is when people do accept for a moment that they are, for once, they're not on social media, they're not watching the news, they are actually getting a nonpartisan coded thing that you're trying to sell them that's kind of packaged in all of this other stuff. And you're actually selling them on the idea that their intuitions about this thing being wrong are just accurate, and that the law often does track those things, and if it doesn't, it should. And being able to talk to people about our cases and kind of seeing the scales fall off and they become more comfortable and then just curious, and then they start asking questions, and then they realize that our cases cut across a bunch of things that they would think is partisan, and then we don't fit in a bucket anymore for them. I love that because there's very few examples of that, I think, in people's lives right now. Like, I think that people mostly have examples of, and even law-related, like when people see this lawsuit has been filed, they, I think, understandably are thinking of it in kind of like, well, which team is filing this lawsuit and all the signaling that comes along with it. And so I think it's a testament to the work that we do and the way that we do it that we can honestly stand in front of people and tell them, like, this is why we litigate this. Like, it's wrong.
Right.
Like, it's wrong, and we think that it's unconstitutional, and we're not suing someone because they have this partisan affiliation or that. Like, we really couldn't care less. And I think that that's sometimes shocking to people, but then I think they love it. If they give themselves permission to, they love it. And, like at that talk, I got so many questions where it was just a bunch of people who were maybe for the first time thinking of things like license plate readers, or like a bunch of novel issues that we litigate, and just like very fascinated by it. So it was nice to be able to give that to people and to see them have that genuine interest.
I mean, that's like part of what brings people to IJ is the sense that this is not a place that's like Republican or Democrat team coded. It's just in fact a place where we have a conception of justice and the Constitution and a free society, and we're fighting for that. And that does, as you say, cut across a lot of ideological or partisan lines.
Yeah, I find that some, acquaintances and things will say like, oh, you live in the DC area. Is it just crazy right now? And, because everything just feels so hyper partisan. And honestly, I'm like, I'm in a little bubble. Like, I'm in a happy little bubble at the Institute for Justice where, we don't all agree with each other on everything. And we have, there's a wide array of, I think, political viewpoints. Probably we're all libertarian generally, but like on different issues we might diverge and things like that. But one, we can talk about things respectfully and like not let it influence how we feel about one another, which is great. But also, we're a principled organization. We don't really care about the politics. We care about the principles. And I think that's just such a refreshing thing to have that sort of that little insulated bubble from a crazy world of like, we're just going to keep being happy warriors, keep doing what we're doing. And, the winds may blow outside, but we've got a nice little thing going.
We do. Okay, next game, Two Truths and a Lie. So we're going to do this as our legal careers in general. So we're going to try and pick, Kirby, do you want to go first? You want to tell two truths and a lie?
Sure. All right.
And then Should Josh be the one to pick do you want to try and pick the lie?
Why don't we both?
Yeah, you both can.
We'll
Well, how about
consult.
this? It's gonna be like 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
John and I'll put our hands under the table with the one we
Okay.
like the
all
number,
right.
and then we'll
Okay.
reveal at the same time.
All right.
Perfect.
So I'm going to preface this with just like my best fun fact I couldn't use because both of you know this very well because you've worked with me on this case. But I'm going to say it anyway because it is a really fun fact that my dad is my local counsel on one of my cases, which is fantastic. So thanks, Dad. And as John has dubbed him, Father Counsel.
Father Counsel.
That's been a really cool IJ experience, but I can't use it because you both already know my dad. Okay, so 2 truths and a lie. I'm going to give 3 facts, or are they? Number 1, I have been misgendered by a U.S. Supreme Court justice. Number 2, an amicus brief that I drafted in law school was cited by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in a freedom of conscience case under the Pennsylvania Constitution. And number 3, I successfully litigated an asylum case for an asylum seeker from the Gambia.
Ooh.
They're
They're all specific enough. That
Those are very good.
Yeah, those are pretty good.
Man. Okay. I've got my guess.
You have yours?
Yeah.
Might as well. You ready?
Yeah. 3, 2, 1. The lie is I put 2. You put 3, John.
All right. It is Josh Windham is successful. Number
Nice.
2 was a lie.
Nice.
And number 2 was
The amicus brief was quoted by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
Not that one is believable, but it was so specific.
It is so specific. I worried about that too. I have a embarrassing fan mail habit. I like to let people know if I like things or don't like
Sure.
things. I feel compelled. Like you should know. I think you did a good
It's not
job.
embarrassing.
I do that too all the time.
Yeah, it's
People appreciate it. People
especially with
appreciate
bands.
the
Like if it's a
feedback.
smaller band, I'm like, your
gotta
music
know.
is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
people appreciate that.
Yeah, because most people don't do that.
So when I was in law school, Justice Thomas came to speak, and he had kind of boycotted the law school that I went to for quite a while, and so it was nice to have him there. I appreciated that, but also after the talk, he stayed with our FedSoc chapter for a really long time and literally spoke to every single person who was at this reception. Like many students left before he did. He hit it off with one of my friends who's from Tennessee, talking about Dolly Parton's Dixie Stampede,
Nice.
which was delightful. But anyway, I wrote him a note just to say, thank you so much for coming. You don't have to respond to a thank you note. He wrote a thank you note to my thank you note, which was absolutely just so nice. But he did call me Mr. Thomas in the thank you note. So I was misgendered by a Supreme Court justice. And then my other one, I did actually litigate an asylum case for an asylum seeker from the Gambia while I was in Big Law, and highly recommend that to people who are considering public interest, to do a lot of pro bono work while you're at Big Law, but also even if you're not, honestly, because you will be able to get real life litigation experience so much faster in the pro bono space. So do as many pro bono hours as you can. I was able to do this asylum hearing, which was about 3 hours long, but it was basically like a real trial. Like we had an expert witness, we had examination and cross-examination, we had, opening and closing statements. And then at the end, we got to call this guy who was in detention, had been in detention for months, and tell him that he got to stay in the United States and he got to bring his wife over. And it was, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
so,
awesome.
Big recommendation for do as much pro bono work as you can if you're working at a big law firm and you're kind of fresh out of law school.
John,
Josh.
you're
Oh,
you're next.
I'm next?
You're next on the rotation.
All right, fine. Okay, so
This is a circle. The table's round.
Yeah, but it's also a triangle. Okay, so my 3 are: I was president of my law school's FedSoc chapter. I have been in only one state Supreme Court building. I have been to more than one Supreme Court oral argument in person.
Those are all good. They're all at the same level of generality. That was wise,
And it's
Yeah.
kind of
Those are very good.
It's kind of obnoxious.
Yeah.
I mean, I was trying to make it somewhat difficult.
I have my guess.
But you were definitely running out of time.
All right.
Okay.
I guess. Wow.
All right.
Kirby's
Kirby
got
guess.
it.
What
I
was
was a
the answer?
mere secretary
All
of
right.
our FedSoc chapter.
Not that I didn't believe in you, John. I believe you could have been if you wanted to, but
No, my-
the other
So I guess
the other
number-
2 seemed more likely to me that you
Yeah.
had been
Which
in more
one
than
did
one
you guess?
state.
I guess that you
Supreme Court.
hadn't been to more than one.
Yeah, I've
Court
only been
argument.
to the oral arguments. I think I've been to like probably 4 or 5
In person?
in Supreme Court oral
Oh,
arguments.
God,
Yeah,
Josh. I was like, maybe the COVID thing would have made so
right.
that you
The
were missing
timing,
a lot.
yeah, the timing
Yeah.
makes sense. No, I've only been to the Iowa Supreme Court building. Yeah,
So I knew you'd been there, and I was
Yeah.
like, surely maybe
could be
just...
another one.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, no. Shout out to my good friend Hugh from Case Western, was the president of our FedSoc chapter, and it was wonderfully run, mostly due to him. So, Josh,
Okay. Are you ready?
yeah.
Ready.
2 truths and a lie. I have climbed up a grain silo. This is all for work.
Okay.
It sounds like the beginning of a poem.
So number 1, I have climbed up a grain silo. Number 2, I have held a compound bow. And number 3, I have visited a marijuana garden. Again, all of these on the job at IJ.
Oh my goodness. All of those sound extremely plausible. Especially I could see you just climbing a grain silo for fun. You'd be like, hey, can I climb that? Oh gosh, that's tough. All right, let's see.
I have mine.
All
Whenever
right.
you're ready.
Oh, this is really tough. Remind me what number 3 was?
Number 3 was I have visited a marijuana garden.
Okay. That seems very plausible.
She's like, that one's definitely true.
All right, I have a guess.
okay.
John guesses 2. Kirby guesses 1. The answer is 2. I have never held a compound bow for work.
Oh, okay.
I have climbed up a grain silo.
Was that for an open field?
It was a PC trip to a potential client's farm, and he had a beautiful rainbow painted grain silo with an old ladder on it that I climbed all the way up and then got stung by a bee. And then the marijuana garden thing was true. And you would know that if you would listen to Bound by Oath,
Yep.
where we went to Mr. Thornton's Woods.
Thornton's Woods.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've been called out. I missed that one.
I went there with John Ross, actually.
Oh, very
that was the site of one
There's
of the
good
Supreme
pictures
Court
from it.
open fields cases. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you around a compound bow for work? I was wondering if there just
No, it's just that so many of my clients are hunters, and so I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
it sounded
It seems very
plausible. They would just say,
plausible.
"Hey,
You
hold
wanna-
this bow."
Absolutely. That sounds like a classic
Yeah.
Josh Windham IJ story that you
Yeah.
would have gone like
That's a
shooting
very,
with
like,
your client.
100%.
Yeah.
I almost put I have held the gun, but I was like, you guys are going to think that's too much, so I switched it for bow.
yeah, bow's a good one.
Oh, you mean like I wouldn't believe it? I would totally believe that you went shooting with a client.
Yeah, to me it felt like maybe one step too
Okay,
aggressive
yeah.
for a Josh Wyndham
Yeah.
story. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's fair. It was a those are
good.
very strategic 2 truths, 1 lie.
Did we each get one point
I
there?
think
Yeah.
so.
All right.
Yeah, we're all equal here. We'll see about that because now.
Oh, dear.
So we're going to move on to our third and final game, which we're going to call "Who Said It." These are all lines from famous Supreme Court cases. You are being asked to guess the justice, not the case, the justice. You don't need to guess whether they were in the majority or concurring or dissent. It's just who said it, and that's it.
I need our listeners to know that you are going to be just as good at this as I am.
Better than me, likely.
We'll see. These are not all in historical order, and they're not all chronological, but they mostly are.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's going to help. Maybe. Okay.
John,
So the
that
way that
helps less.
the way that we're going to do this is we'll pick someone to go first. They will go if they get it right. It will go to the next person, but they will get a point. If they get it wrong, the other person can steal.
All right.
We'll start with Kirby.
Lay it on me.
It is emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is.
Thank you, John. Marshall in Marbury versus Madison.
There we go.
All right. Thank you for giving me a win to start us off.
You
I think
didn't.
this is.
So the listeners, we don't have to give a case.
We don't have to give a case.
Kirby's just junking.
Okay, the reason
Yeah.
why I did this is because I wanted to get as much as I could out
can
of one
show
that I
off.
knew to make up for my inevitable failures going forward in this round.
no.
So
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, Josh, you ready?
Yeah.
The power to tax involves the power to destroy.
Is it? I feel like there's a few good options here, and it's probably quoted in multiple opinions. It's mostly in chronological order, but some of it's not.
Most of it's in chronological order. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Barron versus Baltimore.
Justice. You need the justice.
Oh, drats.
Yeah.
Drats.
It might make it easier. I'm not sure. I think the cases are harder, in my opinion, than the justice.
I think
Marshall
cases are
again?
easier.
No, it's
maybe.
a story.
No.
Drats.
You want to try?
Okay, I think it might be Marshall again. Is it McCullough versus Maryland?
It is not. It is not only Marshall, but it is McCullough.
Oh, I said
versus
Marshall
Maryland.
first and I withdrew it.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah. Okay, so Kirby has 2. Josh, you get we'll go back to you. Yeah. All right, you ready? This is not an easy one. I'm sorry, but that might mean neither of you are going to get it.
Great.
The Constitution of the United States is a law for rulers and people equally in war and in peace.
Ooh.
This is a tough one.
Taft?
Mm-mm.
Drats.
Listeners will like to know that everybody is extremely deep in thought. You
Is
can
it
see
the young? I'm gonna guess the case again. Is it Youngstown?
No.
Okay. I'm.
That's a good guess
I don't
though.
know.
That feels very like emergency doesn't switch off.
Wait, before
the
you give the answer, is
Constitution.
it Jackson?
No, it's not actually.
okay.
It does sound very Jackson-y.
It does.
Yeah. It's Justice David Davis and ex parte Milligan.
You know what? I wasn't gonna get that one. So
Okay, next one. This will go to Kirby. Our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens.
is it Brown versus Board of Education?
No, but you're on the right track. But that was your guess.
Okay, wait. Okay, but I guess the case. I didn't guess a justice.
Oh, that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
I'm gonna guess Marshall. Thurgood Marshall.
Nope.
Okay.
Say the quote again.
Our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens.
Brandeis?
It's Harlan.
Dissenting
and
and
Plessy.
Plessy.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Harlan.
Rats,
Darn
man.
it.
I feel like
Okay, I should have gone with
Maybe I
that.
should include the case.
No, it's fine.
No, don't.
Keep us
Yeah.
Keep us suffering.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's
who-
fine.
who
Let's
is-
stick with it.
Who's next?
We've
Would it be
committed.
Well, yeah, I'll start with you again.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I got that one wrong, so yeah.
the common law is not a brooding omnipresence in the sky, but the articulate voice of some sovereign or quasi-sovereign that can be identified. Let me know if you want it again.
Holmes.
It is. Yep. It's
Brooding
Holmes.
omnipresence, yeah.
Brooding, he's a pithy dude.
Yeah.
Dissenting in South Pacific Company versus Jensen. Okay, point for Josh. So you have
One.
you
Kirby has
have 2. Kirby has 2. Okay, next one for Kirby. The most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting fire in a theater and causing a panic.
Oh my goodness, this is so embarrassing because I absolutely should know this. It's like literally the most famous First Amendment case. Kirby, you big dummy.
People hate this quote.
Yes, they do.
It's used all the time to justify basically every speech restriction in the world.
I know. It is.
5 seconds.
Okay. Is it Jackson?
Nope.
Okay.
Frankfurt.
Nope.
Drats, man.
It's Holmes again.
Holmes.
Yep. Shouting fire in a theater. Give it to Holmes to say something pithy, but probably wrong. Okay. This is Josh's. We have 4 more. The best test of truth is the power of the thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market.
I don't know. Powell?
Nope.
Brandeis?
Nope. Holmes.
Oh! Done!
Unacceptable.
I know, it's brutal. Okay, next one to Kirby.
When are we going to get to the future? I feel like we're stuck in the early 20th century right now.
But there's so many good ones from that era. I know it when I see it.
Okay. I know that this is the pornography case.
I'm never going to know the justice.
Was this Jackson?
Nope.
No.
You want to
Powell.
take a shot? No. It was Potter Stewart.
Oh my gosh.
All
Jack
right.
Bellis versus Ohio. Okay.
That was quoted in one of our open fields cases. Did you know that?
really.
Wait,
Yeah.
how?
I see it.
It was quoted in a concurrence in the Rainwater's trial court decision. We had a
Really?
3-judge panel,
Okay.
and there is a distinction in Tennessee law between what are called wastelands and possessions, which are protected by the state constitution. And it really has to do with the degree of dominion or control you exercise over your land. And one of the concurring judges in the case quoted that and basically said, I don't know the precise definition of a wasteland, but I know it when I see it.
Nice.
All right.
That's a fun use of it.
Yeah.
It is a good.
And this is not it, he said.
And okay, two more.
Josh. Put us out of our misery, John.
This is for this is fun. This is for Josh. Penumbras formed by emanations from those guarantees that help give them life and substance.
I don't know who wrote Roe versus Wade. Oh wait, that's Griswold, isn't it? Let me think. Who wrote Griswold?
People do think Roe when they hear that quote, but
They do.
But it is because
Yeah.
it's quoting Griswold. Yeah.
I can tell you I don't know the answer.
Okay. You have a
Warren.
Okay. No.
I was going to say Warren too. I
good
also,
guess.
this was one where I know the case, but not the justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say Warren too. I'm just going to forfeit this one. I don't have a good guess.
It's Douglas.
Douglas. Okay. Well,
Is Douglas the one who wanted to give trees standing? Is that Douglas? I think that was Douglas. I'm not sure. He was like a big. I think if it is Douglas, I'm thinking of. He was like a big environmentalist and argued for trees having standing. Curious.
he called that the Lorax Doctrine.
Lorax Doctrine. Right next to the Penumbras Doctrine. Okay, last one. So this is for Kirby. One man's vulgarity is another man's lyric.
Okay.
Sometimes they must know that they've written something where they're like, that's a banger.
Yeah.
You
Is
know?
that, I know the case, I think. Is that Cohen versus California?
It is, yeah.
Okay. So maybe someone would give me a half point for knowing the case
You've had
and
quite
not
a
the
few
justice.
cases, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm better at cases than justices, but okay, who? It is that is a great pithy quote.
It's a good one.
It's a really good one. Is it Brandeis? No.
Do you want to take a shot? You wanted to play games?
Holmes.
It's Harlan. It's
Harlan.
I was like, look, numerically, Holmes has dominated this competition.
Yeah.
So
It was-
why would I not?
it was a little unfair to put 3 Holmes in a row, but
I'm frustrated that
that's
you didn't
good.
have any modern justices.
I know.
know.
Yeah, not a
To pull
Scalia
from.
in a
I
quote. That's like
know.
immediately
I know.
identifiable.
If-
This wolf comes as a wolf.
I know. If we did Morrison, it would have been like
Yeah.
it would have been easy. I probably should have done some of the the Scalia. I do think is probably
Is maybe
the most
too
quotable
recognizable,
of
yeah.
like the modern justices.
Or in a different way, Kennedy is also very recognizable.
yes,
You know? It's like-
yeah, in a different
Yeah.
way. Scalia would agree in a different way. Yeah. Okay. So,
All right, well-
did you?
Well done, Kirby.
Did you end up tied, or
No,
was
Kirby
it 2-1?
won.
It was 2-1.
2-1, yeah. I got a single point.
So
That's
just
pretty good.
edit out
And
all
you
the
got a
other
lot of
questions.
half
Pretend there were
points.
only 3 questions. Josh got 1 correct. I got 2.
Excellent. That was fun. Okay, so we'll end really quick with a legal and non-legal thing that you've been, not illegal. You don't need to announce that on the podcast.
Well,
but
Josh already told us he likes to go to marijuana gardens. So
marijuana
I don't know.
patches, shoot bows, and climb.
It was legal under Maine law.
Grain mills. So just anything you've been listening to or watching or consuming that's been enriching you. That one that's legal related and one that's non-law related. Josh, do you want to go?
You want to start with the legal, you said?
You can do either.
Okay. So I've been enriched over the last couple of days by the fact that like there's no real settled law on whether fingerprinting is a search under the 4th Amendment, which you would think is like surely
Kind
that
of
has
a
been
big deal.
answered by the Supreme Court. And the answer is it has not been answered. Like it's just an open question of 4th Amendment law, which is fascinating, right? Now, I think there was an easy answer to it now under the Jones trespass test that like if you physically intrude on somebody to acquire information from them, that's a search under kind of Jones. But all of the cases that have talked about fingerprinting are pre-Jones. So they're just, it's like an open question on this issue. And so then I read this case from the Wisconsin Supreme Court called Johnson versus Vander Kooi, Kooi. And there's a concurrence by somebody named Justice Welch up there. And it's just like a fascinating case. It's about a policy that a police department had of like stopping and fingerprinting people. And the question was whether the policy was facially unconstitutional.
Just like randomly stopping people and fingerprinting?
Yeah. In the context of like a Terry stop. But like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so the majority says, this is a search under the Jones trespass test. And so that's how at least one state high court has sort of addressed this. But the concurrence has this great lengthy discussion about, even if we didn't have this trespass test, here's why it's an invasion of your reasonable expectation of privacy under Katz. And the Supreme Court had sort of said stuff in dicta over the years that suggested fingerprinting wasn't like very intrusive of people. But this concurring opinion says, look, that's all like mid 20th century commentary. Think about how fingerprints are used now. Like some people need fingerprints to like open safes or open their phone, or like it's now like a digital biomarker that can be used as sort of a key to unlock the most private parts of our lives, not to mention what the government could potentially do with it by analyzing someone's fingerprint. And so the idea behind the concurrence is whatever one might have thought about this back in like the early 20th century, mid 20th century, technology has sort of moved in a way that this is actually much more intrusive for the government to have than it would have been 50, 100 years ago. So it's just a fascinating issue that I'm learning about in the context of like looking into something at IJ.
Very cool.
Yeah, that is super cool. And it sounds like you were saying, there's this other kind of standard that has governed it, but it is not only outdated, but there's a new standard that feels kind of me like Hardinez, the dog sniff case. It's like you have these old dog sniff precedents, but now you have Jones. Like, what are you supposed to do with that?
Yeah,
and the court's like, well, definitely not.
And the thing that's fascinating is that this has only really come up meaningfully in the context of if you've been detained or arrested and brought to a police station and then you're booked. And there's like booking procedures that police do. One of those is fingerprinting. And so courts, like in the context of that, will say like, oh, fingerprinting is like not very intrusive, whatever. But it's all in the context of somebody who's already in police custody, who's already been lawfully arrested. And so the discussion of it is this sort of dicta commentary, like in a case called Davis from the 60s, about how like this is just a lawful incident to an arrest type of thing. But no cases really talk about it as like, what if the government just goes and fingerprints you on its own? You're like, is that a search?
Yeah.
Right? It's just not, doesn't come up in the cases, which is kind of fun.
That's so interesting.
Awesome. And then one non-legal thing. We can do both of them and then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't really know like what I want to give as my answer here. I sort of want to just be honest and say that I watched the Taylor Swift documentary on the Eras Tour, and it was like super delightful and like very like emotional in some places because you get a lot of backstory behind like people who were on the like production crew of the show or the tour, and like dancers who are involved or people who are involved in like, creating all the cinematography of it. And it just was like a very cool behind the scenes look into what was obviously like a huge
massive
multi-year
undertaking.
global spectacle. And just to sort of see the way that it, impacted people all over the place and all the work that went into it. It was like an awesome behind the scenes look at something I didn't get to go to. So yeah.
I love that because when I think of Josh Wyndham's musical taste, I think of like heavy metal,
Yeah, you should.
which I know is accurate. I'm being sincere. So I love Josh Wyndham's Secret Swiftie.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is
I'm
great.
married to Gabby, my
Yeah.
wife, who works here at IJ, and she is a Swiftie. So
Yeah.
by osmosis, one becomes a Swiftie.
That happens. Absolutely.
Right. Kirby?
Okay, so my law-related thing, sort of relevant to multiple things we've talked about already. One, war games that you were mentioned earlier, and two, how we find cases at IJ. I am going to talk about AI. So there are some IJers who have a real gift for finding new cases. Josh Wyndham. I have never really been that person. Like I love to litigate my cases, but I find working up a new case to be frustrating sometimes. And I'm not, I think I don't see myself as good at like identifying IJ cases in the wild and follow, like being able to make it happen. That is more challenging to me. And inspired by our colleague Justin Wilson, who was giving us a presentation about kind of permissible and impermissible uses of AI at the Institute for Justice, I am also like the least technologically competent person that you know. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to fiddle around with our kind of internal AI system that we have and see what I can do with it. And I set up a recurring weekly search for forfeiture PCs by scanning the federal forfeiture notices that are posted and cross-referencing them against like dockets that would show like if someone has been criminally charged to try to identify innocent owners, and also looking for like news stories about forfeitures or seizures that are suspicious with like various parameters. And it can also like do docket searches for cases that we might want to take over on appeal. And there are already kind of existing ways to do various pieces of this, and many IJRs do have them already set up. But I have found it very cool that like the AI kind of can combine all these different things and do it all at once, and then once a week be like, hey, here are some PCs that you might want to look into. And I'm pretty excited about that. I'm still sort of an AI doomer, I will say, but I do like this one piece of potential AI use that I have found pretty cool.
Very cool.
It will be. I just watched Terminator 2 recently and was thinking like the AI will be super useful until it's not.
Yeah, right,
you know?
exactly.
But like until that day comes, it's great. Yeah. It's good at doing a bunch of things. And then one day it will say, do you want to play a game? And then you're going to be like, well, it was a good run. But until then, it will help us find PCs.
I also like to use AI to make coloring pages for my kids. So they could say like very specifically what they want.
clever.
Like, I want a garden tea party with macarons, which was a recent request by my 3-year-old.
doesn't
And
want
the
that?
AI can give you that. And they're like, I don't like the macaron tray there. And I'll be like, okay, I'll move it over here. It's pretty
I
cool.
like that a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
What's your non-law thing?
So my non-law thing, I was trying to think about this and I was embarrassed because I'm like, I'm not reading any books. I'm not watching any TV shows right now. I'm not listening to new music. And that's because, as you both know, I welcomed my 4th child 5 months ago. So things are a little busy on the home front.
I think you have an excuse.
And then I thought, you know what? What is more enriching than a new baby? So I am going to take this podcast for a pronatalist turn here and recommend that everybody have a baby if it's feasible in your life right now, because truly the most enriching thing you can do. And it's been such a delight to see my older 3 kids and what this new baby brings out of them. And each of them is a little bit different now, having this new sibling in kind of delightful ways. And it's just been, nothing can make people happier when you're out in the world than having a little baby, you get smiles out of people that look kind of grumpy otherwise. And I think having the 4th kid, I'm a little bit more relaxed as a mom, and I definitely have a very strong sense of how quickly this will pass by. And so I'm really just kind of enjoying all the snuggles and the baby phase and the smiles, and it's just a delight. So my enriching thing is a baby.
Impossible to top,
Wow.
I think. Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Yeah, it's okay. I think that is probably the best answer we've gotten so far, so I'll take it. I have only books to offer. My non-law thing is I'm reading the first book in Robert Caro's multi-volume series on LBJ.
Oh, I want to read that so bad. It's on my list.
My friend and I are reading it together, and we were like, do we skip to one of the later ones, like he's already president, or do we start with like West Texas? And we decided to start with the first book and just read them through. And we were trying to kind of pick what book we were going to read. And we've read an Eisenhower book, a great Eisenhower book. I'm rewatching Mad Men, which is one of my favorite shows. And for anybody who's seen the show, it basically covers like the post-Eisenhower era. So you get kind of like LBJ into JFK and Nixon running JFK, and then you get then you get LBJ, and then you get Nixon. And like the show kind of covers that era, which is just such a fascinating time in American history. And like I'm not picking LBJ as one of my favorite presidents, but he is just a very pivotal figure in American history. And the Great Society is kind of like a big deal. Civil Rights Act is a big deal. And he was just a bizarre human being. And he was intimidating. He came from nothing. He's unusual. And so the book has been fascinating. Robert Caro is an incredibly talented writer. And I think he's been working on this series since the early mid 70s. And in the first volume, he's like, I'm going to write a 3-volume. It's not 3 volumes. He was very ambitious to think I'm going to write a 3-volume series. It's, 4 or 5, I think. And he's not even finished. So
Well, that's why I want to read it. It's not because I have a great interest in LBJ, but just because from everybody I've known who has read it, just like Caro is such an amazing biographer that it's just worth reading as like, a work of biography that's so
Can you
iconic.
imagine somebody writing a multi-volume, in-depth biography of your life?
I was like, there's not enough there,
scary.
man. I need to get moving.
want that.
Yeah,
I would not want that,
Yeah.
but I also think that LBJ definitely would not have wanted that. He was very secretive. So the fact that someone is like, I got you, I'm going to write you couldn't find anything about his childhood. He had taken pictures out of his yearbook so that no one could find pictures of him in his yearbook. So he didn't want people to know kind of where he came from. So it makes it even more interesting because you're getting kind of a deep dive into someone who's like, I don't want anybody to know who I am. So it's cool. Highly recommend it. It's awesome. And then I did, for my law-related thing, I took a break from reading Akil Amar's big, very good, more recent book called Born Equal, which covers from 1840 to 1920, and I'm back to reading that. It's phenomenal. I love that era because I think, especially if someone's interested in law, it is unless you have a professor or a mentor or someone or you work at IJ where like we care about Reconstruction and the 14th Amendment a lot. Unless you're interested in those things, I think for a lot of people, it's a bit of a blind spot. It's like, there's a bunch of stuff. There's, the founding era, and then like a bunch of stuff happened, like the Civil War, and there were some amendments or something, and that fundamentally changed the nature of the country. So his book is part of a project that he's working on to kind of tell the story of American law and the story of the Constitution.
How does it compare to the first one?
I think it's as good so far.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's really good. And that's to say, I like his first book. Yeah, I think he's a great writer. So those are the things that I've been enjoying. Josh and Kirby, thank you both for coming on the show. To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Be sure to tune in to our next episode. And until then, that's just like your unpublished opinion, man.
But